today's Salt Lake City Council meeting. We are happy to have you here while we continue to hold our meeting remotely due to safety precautions related to the pandemic and the earthquake. But thank you for joining us. We will begin with a moment of silence as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. When we are done, we will turn our audio back on. As we begin tonight's formal meeting, I would like to highlight that as the city's elected officials, council members not only serve on the city council, we also serve as the local building authority board and the redevelopment agency board. As we move through each of those agendas, think of it as the city council wearing a different hat for each of their roles. For the public comment opportunities we have today, we are accepting your comments through WebEx, and for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. Before we begin moving through the agendas, I want to mention and review our rules of decorum. These are guidelines that the City Council has always had in place to help our meetings progress in an orderly, civil, and efficient way. These help us move through the agenda and give everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions without feeling intimidated. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum begin from the moment you arrive into our virtual meeting. The Council respects all points of view and we welcome new insights. While giving your comments, please be respectful. Avoid yelling, profanity, or making racial slurs, obscene, or defamatory remarks. Again, we're trying to create a place where everyone can feel that their voice is being heard and a place of respect. If you use profanity during your comment, your line will be muted. And if any comments reach a level of disrespect, I will ask that you be muted and you will forfeit your opportunity to address the council tonight. If you feel you need to use profanity to express your point, you're welcome to email council members or call our comment line. In addition, our staff will request your name during the registration process. To limit disruption, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your registered name doesn't meet this requirement, our staff will use the chat feature to work with you on that. Robert Nutzman from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate. Please monitor the chat screen for information and/or feel free to message Robert with any questions. If you would like to send any comments to the City Council, please feel free to. You can send mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114. Email us at council.comments@slcgov.com or call us at 801-535-7654. We will begin with our first hearing item for the local building authority. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment and unmuting lines. Once we open public comment, Taylor will announce 3 names at a time so that the people can have some notice and be prepared to speak. When it is your turn to speak, Taylor will say your name, unmute your line, and you may begin. Please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you are unable to finish your comment, please refer to your chat screen. Our staff will post our contact information. If you do not wish to speak, please message our staff to let them know, or when the host states your name, please let us know that you are just here to listen. Our local building authority hearing is regarding a resolution, the budget for capital projects fund of the local building authority for fiscal year 2021-2022. The board will accept public comment and consider approving a resolution adopting the final budget for the capital projects fund of the local building authority of Salt Lake City. I just said that. Taylor, will you please start with our first public comment on this?
Yes, Council Chair. For this item, it looks like we have about 9 commenters. The first one will be Carolyn Fleming, followed by Morgan Call, and then Pacheco Lataro.
And Taylor, before we begin, I do want to make sure that everyone who is commenting understands that at this point, we are accepting comments only on the local building authorities capital project funds for fiscal year 2021, 2022. When we put our city council hats on, there will be time for general comments about anything.
Madam Chair, if it would be helpful, I can give a little context about what the local building authority is, and it's a pass-through for debt service on the Glendale and Marmalade Library branches. So it's essentially just debt service for those buildings that have already been built.
Thank you very much, Jen. Sorry, Taylor, go ahead.
Okay, my apologies. For this item, it looks like we have 4 commenters, which we will start with Deborah Chaltron, followed by Tyre Hauser, and then Lucy Hauser. Deborah, you are unmuted.
Hi, yes. It's my understanding that this is in regards to, sorry, let me just start again. I came to Salt Lake City 6 years ago with my boyfriend, and it was through tennis at Coach Mike's that we developed our circle of friends. I wasn't even a tennis player at the time, but after watching my boyfriend play, I picked up the sport, and at the age of 43, it's given me a social network that didn't exist before. So it's more than playing tennis to me. It's my way of connecting to the community. And there's nothing I look forward to more than seeing my friends at a tennis workout or meeting my beginner tennis league friends for dinner every month. All this has been made possible through the city-owned facilities, tennis facilities at Liberty Park and Oak Hills Tennis. I would love for the city to help the Liberty Park and Oak Hills tennis clubs to continue to provide for the community. And sorry, I'm a little nervous. I apologize. Anyway, one of the things I loved about Salt Lake was the fact that the city has done an amazing job at maintaining facilities and keeping the whole city so well run. It's one of the most profound things that a city can do is to support its community this way. And the tennis facilities at Liberty Park and Oak Hills would tremendously benefit. It would so help the community further if the city would step up and fund what's necessary to keep it successful, these facilities successful. Thank you. Sorry, wow, I'm so nervous. Huh. That's it for me. Thank you.
Next, we will have Tyre Hauser, followed by Lucy Hauser, Callie Mower.
Madam Chair, do you want to continue to take the comments that are not on the topic?
No. And I think that it's a little bit confusing, and especially since we are on WebEx and it's even more confusing. Cindy or Jen, perhaps you could give a little bit longer explanation of the local building authority and what this topic is. And just again, for people listening, we will have general comment for the city council a little bit later in the agenda.
And I'll add one thing before Jennifer explains the local building authority. There is a budget hearing tonight, and that will be coming up in a few minutes. This is not the budget hearing. So if someone wants to comment on the city fees or the taxes or improvements that they want to have made, then that's when they would speak. Jennifer,
right, and I could see how this is a little confusing. The technical term for the budget that we're talking about within the local building authority is the capital projects account, which could cause people to think capital projects as it relates to the general fund. But just to clarify, this particular hearing relates to the local building authority, which at this point is just a pass-through for debt service on the Glendale Library Branch and Marmalade Library Branch. Like Cindy said, the hearing later in the evening when it relates to the overall annual budget is an appropriate time for the public to talk about proposed capital projects in the mayor's recommended budget as it relates to the general fund. So hopefully
Thank you, Jen. I hope
and
that
if people already signed up for one and are waiting in the queue to speak, they can just say that they're going to speak later when you call on them. I think that would be a way to handle it.
hopefully that made the muddy waters muddier or clearer a little bit. So Taylor, let's get back and see where we're at.
Okay, so we will hear from Tyre Hauser and then Callie Maurer. Tyre, you are unmuted.
So I think I may have to speak later, if that's all right. I think my comment would be best suited for I guess maybe the general one.
I can just add them to that list.
Perfect. Yes. And to Deborah, no need to be embarrassed or anything. This is incredibly confusing, just generally when we're all meeting in person. So I appreciate everyone's patience with us.
Yep. And Tyler, if you are meeting or if you're speaking about a budget item that you'd like the city to fund something, then you can speak at the budget hearing, which it will be before the general. The general is the very last thing. So if you have anything to do with budget, then speak during budget.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, then we will hear from Callie Maurer. Callie, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I actually think that I need to wait too, so I'm sorry for the confusion, guys, but it's commenting on the CIP budget recommendation, so I'll hang tight.
Thank you all. Again, sorry for all of the confusion. And again, to clarify, right now we're meeting as the local building authority. We have a couple of items of business. We will then meet as the RDA, as the redevelopment agency board. Again, some very preliminary couple of items of business. And then we will be meeting as the city council. And I'll try to make that as clear as possible. I wish I could change outfits so you or like have t-shirts or something for all of us. So council members, I am looking for a motion on the resolution for the budget of the capital projects fund for the local building authority.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and refer to the public hearing on June 1st.
Second, 2021.
Correct.
I have a motion by Board Member Rogers and a second by Board Member Dugan. I'll go ahead and roll call this. Board Member Warden?
Yes.
Board Member Mono?
Yes.
Board Member Rogers?
Yes.
Board Member Ferris?
Yes.
Board Member Dugan?
Yes.
Board Member Valdemoros?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that passes. And we will go to new business. The new business is the board considering adopting a resolution which permits the local building authority board of directors to meet electronically pursuant to the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. I'll look for a motion.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd also like to make a motion that the board adopt a resolution which permits the local building authority board of directors to meet electronically pursuant to the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Rogers and a second by Board Member Dugan. Again, I'll go ahead and roll call. Board Member Valdemoros?
Yes.
Board Member Rogers?
Yes.
Board Member Wharton?
Yes.
Board Member Ferris?
Yes.
Board Member Mono?
Yes.
Board Member Dugan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and that passes. Finally, this does conclude our local building authority agenda. I would look for a motion to adjourn and reconvene as the redevelopment agency board.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by board member Rogers, a second by board member Wharton. Again, I'll go ahead and roll call this. Board member Valdemoros. Board member Wharton.
Yes.
Board member Rogers.
Yes.
Board member Ferris.
Yes.
Board member Mana.
Yes.
Board member Dugan.
Yes.
And I am a yes. We local building authority and reconvened as the redevelopment agency. And Madam Chair of the redevelopment agency, if you'd like, I can just keep rolling through this, or you can take over.
That's okay. You can do it. Madam
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Our first item is the RDA is a public hearing. Again, similar to the last item, Taylor is working with people regarding commenting on the public hearing. This is in relation to the final budget for the redevelopment agency of Salt Lake City for fiscal year 2021-2022. Did someone say something? Okay, so I will turn it to Taylor.
Madam Chair, should we ask Jennifer to say a few words about
Oh.
this one?
Yes, we probably should, so we can avoid some confusion.
So this relates to the budget of the redevelopment agency, which was discussed earlier in the work session this afternoon. There's a separate budget for the redevelopment agency from the city's general fund, although they're both included in the mayor's recommended budget book. This
And
hearing is
Jennifer,
specific to
they're not adopting the budget tonight. They're just
Correct.
accepting it.
accepting comment. They accepted the tentative budget on the 4th. They're accepting comment tonight and on June 1st.
Okay, so this is a bigger one that is any redevelopment topic that relates to the budget. So that includes housing, right?
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, Taylor, we will start with our first public comment, please.
So it looks like we have one commenter for this item, and that will be George Chapman. George, you are muted.
Great. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, George.
Oh, good. Okay. The guiding framework and priority for RDA is economic growth, community impact, and neighborhood vibrancy, right? So why isn't the best implementation of those goals recognized as parks? Look at Singapore, Hong Kong, Sugar House. All are successful, and they have lots of parks. So where's the funding for more parks in RDA? This city, on another subject on RDA, the city's RDA affordable housing funding strategy should be focused on inclusionary zoning with Salt Lake City's council. All RDA and Salt Lake City development should include inclusionary zoning through impact fee mitigation or RDA funding. Creating a building with all low-income residents is disrespectful and treats low income as less than people who can afford market rate. People who make 25% of AMI should be able to live, even in a micro unit, next to people who make 10 times more. Putting all low income in one building is treating low income pretty disrespectfully, in my opinion. And finally, RDA should not be encouraging buildings with Minnie Mouse sidewalks that don't allow strollers or wheelchairs to function with pedestrians on sidewalks next to busy streets. So essentially, I'm saying RDA should recognize and fund parks and inclusionary zoning. Those are my comments. Thanks for listening.
And that was our last commenter for this item.
Great, thank you, George. And with that, I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and refer the public hearing to on June 1st, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Dugan, a second by Board Member Valdemoros. I will go ahead and roll call this. Board Member Dugan.
Yes.
Board Member Valdemoros.
Yes.
Board Member Rogers.
Yes.
Board Member Warden.
Yes.
Board Member Mono.
Yes.
Board Member Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that passes. Now I will ask for a motion to adjourn as the redevelopment agency board and to convene as the Salt Lake City Council.
So
So-
moved, Madam Chair. Sorry, Councilmember Warden. Keep on just doing that to you, man. So
Go
moved.
for it. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Rogers, a second by Board Member Warden. Again, I'll roll call. Board Member Rogers.
Yes.
Board Member Valdemoros.
Yes.
Board Member Warden.
Yes.
Board Member Dugan.
Yes.
Board Member Mono.
Yes.
And Board Member Ferris.
Yes.
I am a yes. We are no longer the RDA board, but are now convening as the Salt Lake City Council. As we are now reconvening as the council, we are at item G1, approval of minutes for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021, February 2nd, 2021, and Tuesday, February 9th, 2021.
Madam Chair, move we approve those minutes.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Dugan. Roll call again. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Warden.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes, that passes. This brings us to our public hearings. As mentioned at the very beginning of our formal meeting, I went over the rules of decorum that are the guidelines for our city council meetings and what we've had in place for everyone to stay safe and feel comfortable in commenting. Just a friendly reminder that those rules apply for our next public hearings and for our general comment section when we get there as well. Robert Nutzman is helping moderate the meeting and will message attendees. Taylor Hill on our staff, it will be calling names of those who wish to comment and unmuting lines. With that, our first public hearing item is H1, and it is regarding the Learned Alley vacation. The council will accept public comment and consider adopting an ordinance that would vacate a city-owned alley adjacent to properties at 1025 West North Temple and 1022, 1028, 1030, and 1032 West Learned Avenue. Before we begin, I would like to turn the time over to Brian Fulmer with the council staff for a brief introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a proposal to vacate a 180-foot by 16.5-foot city-owned alley between North Temple and Learned Avenue to the south, and it's west of 10th West. The alley is located between a restaurant on North Temple and 4 single-family homes fronting Learned Avenue. It is currently being used as a parking lot for the restaurant. All properties adjacent to the alley are owned by the applicant. And it should be noted, this proposal is only for vacating the alley. There is no other council action on this at this point. And that is my intro.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, we can start with our public comments, please.
Okay, so it looks like we have about 9 people here to speak on this item. First, we will hear from Carolyn Fleming, followed by Morgan Call, and then Pachuco Lataro. Carolyn, you are unmuted.
Okay.
thank you for this time. I think that this should go through because I feel in looking at it that having a multifamily housing in that area would be really nice to make it so that it's, you know, using that alleyway to make it so that it fits together as a, instead of two completely separate units. I think it's a way to upgrade that neighborhood. I know that I have friends and family that come into Salt Lake on a regular basis who use tracks, and some of them have never been to Salt Lake before, and as they take the tracks into downtown so that they can come and visit me, I've heard many times, oh, I didn't realize Salt Lake was so poor. Why is it, you know, so run down? Why are, you know, we go by and we see all these houses that are dilapidated and things like this. I think that having a multifamily unit there would really enhance the neighborhood and would make a good impression on those coming in to visit Salt Lake for the first time that are using public transit. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Morgan Call, followed by Pachuco Lotaro, and then Josh Kiblokis.
The alley vacation.
Morgan, you are unmuted.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, can you hear me? I would like to oppose the Learn at Alley vacation. Mostly, honestly, just because I don't think that the gentrification that will occur with most likely high income housing, there's little to no evidence that what Jared Hall will be building will be beneficial to the residents already living in the neighborhood. Additionally, the families displaced currently do not have places to stay. And if the city council approves this ordinance, it gives Jared Hall the construction permit that he needs to build apartments that will just be mostly inaccessible to the people who most need housing. That's all my time. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Pachuco Lotaro, followed by Josh Kiblokis, and then Devin O'Donnell. Pachuco,
Hello?
you are unmuted.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is
Okay.
Pachuco Lautaro. I'm with the Rose Park Brown Berets. I am here to speak and demand that y'all oppose the ordinance Learn Alley Vacation. The applicant, Jared Hall, who is the developer for the Luso Apartments, has not answered any of our concerns and rejections for the apartments. This is another gentrification project that we and the poor and working class will not be able to afford. Families have already been displaced without any relocation options. Real affordable single-family homes have been demolished already, as well as the Pan Buffet, which was a local restaurant in the community. If you allow this, it will give Jared Hall the construction permit to start building. Do not allow this to happen. Longtime residents are being pushed out, as we can see. We the community are rising. We will not allow this to continue. Oppose the ordinance, please. This is not right. We need direct answers from the applicant, Jared Hall, and why he is destroying our neighborhood. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Josh Kiblowitz, followed by Devin O'Donnell, and then Taylor Money. Josh, you are unmuted.
Hi, my name is Josh Kiblowitz. I'm a small business owner and social worker and resident of Salt Lake City. I'd like to urge the council members to vote no on this ordinance. We have to stop these gentrification and displacement projects here. We've already pushed out so many families through the construction of big box apartments, and we can't keep doing this as we are losing options for low-income families to be able to afford places to live. By approving this ordinance, that will allow a path forward for more gentrification and the displacement of low-income families in our community, and only allowing for housing that the wealthiest residents can afford and destroying the community that has been here for so long. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Next, we will hear from Devin O'Donnell, then Taylor Money, and then Ann Charles. Devin, you are unmuted.
Thank you for your time, and Salt Lake City Council and Mayor, thank you for being here and the work you do. However, I do have to ask you to do something better than this Learned Avenue vacation. I do oppose this. We must have something better to do with that property than to knock everything down, displace more families, and build another 217 market rate apartments. According to the developer's info, that is what will go up. No affordable housing no affordable housing has been promised. As we've talked about before, market rate units are wildly unaffordable for the average person or low income earners. All these projects continue to do is move residents further west, and the current community is continually being pushed out in order for these gentrifying apartments to go up in our neighborhoods. I feel like we're in a constant loop of repeating ourselves on this topic, and we cannot stress enough the necessity for the council to stand firm against these luxury developers. They want to take advantage of our city's desire to get the extra money coming in from out-of-state high earners. Bringing in this extra money can't be worth doing so at the expense of our existing residents. You all have the ability to stand ground here and wait for or encourage affordable builders through grants and other programs. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Next, we will hear from Taylor Money, and then Ann Charles, and then Riley Rogers. Taylor, you are unmuted.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Goshu, Ute, and Eastern Shoshone lands, and this area of Salt Lake where this learned alley is being proposed would push out the low-income residents and allow further gentrification projects for high-income folks. This isn't what our community needs at this time. We need more housing for the lower income people. Otherwise, we won't be able to stay in Salt Lake anymore. The Luso Apartments is another gentrification project in our community that we will not be able to afford. And if the City Council approves the ordinance, it gives the developer, Jared Hall, the construction permit for the Luso Apartments. Families that have lived in the homes have been displaced and not given relocation options. So I urge the council to vote no on this ordinance. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Ann Charles, followed by Riley Rogers, and then Roger Croft. Ann, you are unmuted.
Thanks. I also just wanted to say Emily Allworth will want to speak on this as well. She's using the same computer as me. I wanted to reiterate a lot of what people have already been saying. I think this is going to further gentrification. It is not wanted by many members of the community, and people have already been displaced and don't have a place to go. The mayor herself is starting this gentrification committee. I don't even think we need a committee right now. You are getting feedback from the community, telling you what's going on, telling you this will further that. I think right here is the start of that. I think reach out to a lot of these people because they're dropping facts that are really helpful, and I wish I had, more information to give, but I think you guys are really getting the point, and people are giving really good information about how this is just going to further hurt a community that's already being actively displaced. I don't think we need a gentrification committee if it's not going to appropriately address these issues, and I don't have a lot of faith that it necessarily will, based off of the work of the Racial Equity and Policing Committee right now, based off of Matrix's review of the policies of the police. Like right now, it just isn't really looking good, and I want you to know that. That's all.
Next, we will have Riley Rogers, followed by Emily Allworth. Riley, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I probably don't have much to say. I said everything in the last meeting, but just to address the concerns the individuals are bringing up, I completely understand where people are coming from, and I mean, I get it. With what we're doing and the direction we're going, the individuals that we've worked with the residents, all of them have been paid handsomely for their troubles and for moving. We worked out situations that worked for each of them. There was a confrontation on one of the properties that's a longer story than here with the sewer main and an issue that probably wasn't handled in the best way with the individual that was working with them. But even with that, after I spoke with each of those residents this week and, you know, furthered the conversation and to make amends with them and make sure everything was okay. I mean, we've literally paid out over $220,000 to individuals to help them move. We've done as much as we could do. We offered to help find housing. I'm not aware of anybody that wasn't able to find another place or that we didn't help find another place. So, you know, we did what we could on that front. Yeah, and I guess that's all I got. Thank you.
And last, we will have Emily Allworth. Emily, you are unmuted.
Hi there. I would like to actively and vehemently oppose the projected alleyway. I think that I know that it will only allow for construction of a gentrification property. I understand what the person before me was saying about trying to pay out residents of an area in order to move from places in which they are comfortable and happy. And I understand that they may have spent what seems like a large amount of money split amongst many, many people in a housing market that is extremely expensive. I'm wondering why they are not instead offering to give them housing within these apartments free for the rest of their life. If it is, and I don't appreciate any sort of eye-opening or shocked looks. I think removing someone from their home that their family has been in order to form new properties that are only going to increase the amount of money that people who are able to afford building right now in this economy. I don't think that's okay. And I understand that that's a part of city living. However, people are clearly speaking out in the community against this. And I think that in order for Salt Lake to eliminate unhoused people and support a cleaner city, if you will, instead of paying tons of money in order to sweep up after unsheltered people, instead preemptively not letting people become unsheltered because they are pushed from their property. Ask yourself this: is the payout money enough for each individual family and family member to actually buy a piece of property similar to the property that they're being asked to vacate? Are they going to have enough funds to pay rent? Are they going to have enough funds to continue to live where in similar conditions to what they had before? And if they are not able to do that, then I don't understand why you would even offer a pity payout.
And that was our final comment for this item.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to everyone who made a comment. Council members, I will look for a motion on this item.
Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Mano. I will start the roll call. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Mano.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That will be put on a future agenda. This brings us to H2 regarding an ordinance that would vacate a city-owned alley known as the Fern subdivision alley, excuse me, located between 1000 East and 1100 East and between Wood Avenue and Logan Avenue. Before we begin comments, I will turn the time over to Brian Fulmer with our council staff for a short introduction. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, this alley is a city-owned alley between the coordinates you mentioned. The north-south coordinates are approximately 1600 south, just to get your bearings. The east-west alley segment is approximately 336 feet long and 7 feet wide, and the north-south segments are approximately 126 feet long and 10 feet wide. The alley is obstructed by several structures and fences and is not usable currently as an alley. And that is my introduction.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, we can start with our first public comment on this.
Council Chair, it looks like we have about 7 people here to speak on this item. The first will be Devin O'Donnell, followed by Kathleen A, and then Rachel Bicknell. Devin, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I appreciate the intro, but I'm still left a little unable to understand the purpose of this vacation and what the alley would be used for. The agenda had no information further than a petition number, and when you look up that petition number, there's nothing more than the petitioner's personal info. Before action is taken here, I would expect further information regarding that neighborhood impact and purpose of the land afterward at a future hearing so that residents will understand what's happening there. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Kathleen Bratcher, then Rachel Bicknell, and then Joshua Leonard.
The home.
Kathleen, you are unmuted.
Thank you. We own the property that is adjacent to the alley that we are asking to vacate. Right now, we are planning on putting a driveway there. There's already an existing fence on that property that has been there for over 60 years. The fence is falling down, so we're going to replace that fence. We've already talked to all of our neighbors about splitting the alleyway. Like the first person speaking, the east-west portion of the alley is already closed. It's been closed for over 60 years. And all of the fences from the adjoining neighbors have gone up. And we've been working on this since May of 2018 when we needed to replace the fence at that time. And now we've got boards that are propping it up because of the wind blowing it down. So that's why we're asking to vacate. And I'm willing to take questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Unfortunately, in this forum, we don't do a question back and forth, but I think if council members have questions, we have your contact information. They can get in touch with you, but thank you very much for the offer. Taylor, next, please.
Next, we will hear from Rachel Bicknell, followed by Joshua Leonard, and then Jeanette Cortez. Rachel, you are unmuted.
Oh, thank you. I live across from Kathleen Bratcher, and several years back, quite a while, we had an alley closed behind my property. And we had people coming through and doing drugs. I'm not saying that's happening here, but I can say once it was vacated, and we had to actually deed over a little bit of our property, but it was well worth it because it became a much quieter and more secure place with not having different people coming in and out with it. And, you know, I just think it's a good decision to vacate. And, you know, Kathleen Richard, I can't think of any better people to do whatever's required. So I'm a full support of vacating. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Joshua Leonard, then Janet Cortez, and Ann Charles.
Hear me?
Josh, you're unmuted.
Great. Can you hear me, Council?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. I also support Kathleen's statement. This alleyway has not been used as an alleyway for a very long time. It doesn't resemble an alleyway. And so to vacate, I think, is the right move. The one concern I have, and it's not so much a concern, but Devin voiced it, is that it hasn't acted as an alley for a long time. I have a garden box with tomatoes in what is currently the alleyway. And so it's a very fine property line. And I would just ask that once the alley is vacated, hopefully the council votes in that direction, because it's only a matter of 3 or 4 homes, that the council would recognize the existing sort of agreed upon property line. I mean, there's garages sort of abutting each other. It needs to happen, but it also needs to happen in the existing current way, so that people aren't having to remove their garages from a formerly vacated alley or tomato boxes and things like that. So I fully support the vacation of the alley, and also recognize the current existing agreed upon property lines. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear this, Council. That's all.
Next, we will hear from Jeanette Cortez, followed by Ronnie Danish. Jeanette, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to make comments on this issue. I have lived in Salt Lake City for 30 plus years and seen significant growth in our state, and specifically this area in Sugar House. One of the initiatives to remove this alley seems to me to coordinate with other issues that have taken place in Sugar House, with increasing traffic, increasing population, and less venues where the traffic can be diverted. In my opinion, we need to maintain this alley, which will help keep additional cars off the streets and away from the already, frankly, overcrowded streets in that area. 1700 South, and specifically Logan Avenue, are already high traffic areas with street parking, and they're one car accessible. Even now, either way, you have to wait for oncoming traffic to be on one side or the other before you can even pass. And eliminating portions of that alley would further complicate this problem as far as traffic that's there. There is also a restaurant on the corner of Logan Avenue and 1100 East, which on weekends brings a lot of people, further inhibiting the homeowners in that area to park in front of their own properties based on those who are visiting the restaurant. So even having 10 or 12 cars in an alleyway that are now needing to park in the street, there is no parking in the street currently. So anything is better than nothing, in my opinion. And I would have to, there are some homes, I guess, that are using the alleyway for other things. There are other homes who are not, who actually utilize that space to be able to have accessible parking, not only to the back entry to their home, but there's so much traffic and already parked cars on the front entry.
Time.
They need an off.
Next, we will hear from Ronnie Danish. Ronnie, you are unmuted.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yeah, so I want to mention I'm the favorite of the vacant the place because I'm going that area almost more than 3 years to drop my daughter in the daycare, and I saw that area. I'm not pointing anyone, but there's a lot of people, using drugs there and all that. So if the new construction coming there, that would be the plus point for the community and looks more beautiful for the city and have more people to live there, more working opportunities, because I heard like there is a lot of opportunities in the downtown, the companies, but the people don't have a place to live in downtown, and they're just coming all the way the far for 40 or 50-minute drive. So if you have a more place to live in downtown, so it's more benefit for the other, for job wise, for their work wise, and also if they have a good construction there, they have like more people live there, so it reduce the drug system there, the people using there, and they have like, you know, they has like security system, there's the cameras there if the new construction come there, so it's in, I think it's control the crime too if it's the new construction. That's all.
And that was our final comment for this item.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to everyone who commented on this. Council, I will look for a motion.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing to defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Dugan. I will go ahead and roll call this. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Romano.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
And I am a yes. Councilmember Valdemoro stepped away for a moment. So that passes. We are on the next agenda item, H3, which is a budget amendment number 9 for fiscal year 2020-2021. Before we begin taking comments, I will turn the time over to Ben Ludke with council staff to give a short introduction. Thank you, Ben.
This is the first public hearing for budget amendment number 9. There are 17 items totaling just over $10 million in proposed expenditures. Some of the items are $293,000 to build office space for an expansion of the Emergency Management Division, $41,000 for a security upgrade for the 911 department, and moving $8.6 million of transportation funding into the CIP fund, so those projects are part of the annual open and competitive capital improvement program. The council held a public briefing on this budget amendment on May 11th, and the video is available on the council's website as well as YouTube. The budget staff report, the administration's proposal, and supporting documentation are all available in the meeting packet for this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ben. Taylor, we can start with our first commenter, please.
For this item, it looks like we have about 4 people here to speak. The first will be Devin O'Donnell, followed by Ann Charles, and then Ainsley Monick. Devin, you are unmuted.
Thank you. As much as I would love to have an opinion here, I was struggling to locate the budget amendment number 9 on the website and just ended up in the proposed 21-22 budget. So I have not studied this budget amendment and will just have to withdraw my comments.
Next, we will hear from Ann Charles, followed by Ainsley Monick, and then George Chapman. Ann, you are unmuted.
Thanks. The first part of this, the Raise Up SLC, I saw that there were over $500,000 funds that have not been allocated yet because people didn't qualify for the second round of stimulus checks because of the changes that were made. I really encourage you to just give that directly to people who need it. I know in your last work session, you guys had talked about changing the requirements. I really support that. I personally donated it donated to it, hoping it would go directly to those who needed it. And it's really disappointing to see how much is left over, that we just have like a lump sum of money that could easily be going to people who need it, and it's not getting there. So I really hope that you guys relook at, you know, the qualifications and you get it to those who do need it. I also saw that the convention hotel, if I'm understanding this correctly, has like a tax incentive where they're not having to pay sales tax or property tax over the next 25 years. From my understanding, that was a county decision, but I think it's terrible, and I just want to express that. I have to pay taxes, and I don't think a multi-million, potentially billion corporation should get out of paying taxes because we want to bring another hotel into the city. It just sucks to have to pay taxes myself and then know people who are already making millions of dollars are not having to also put in that money. I don't support that. That's all.
Next, we will hear from Ainsley Monick, followed by George Chapman, and then Emily Allworth. Ainsley, you are unmuted.
Hi, I intended to speak on the 2021-2022 budget as a whole, so sorry about the confusion. I'm gonna wait and comment on that later.
Next, we will hear from George Chapman and then Emily Allworth. George, you are unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. On Budget Amendment 9, there's an item that says you're refunding $510,000 that was provided by developers for police impact fees. Whatever happened to the promised and desperately needed East Side precinct? I mean, this doesn't make sense to not be able to manage the funds that developers are giving us for these items to provide police impact. I mean, all this development, we don't have places for the police to actually work out of, and we're wasting a significant amount of time. 40 minutes to go from Pioneer Precinct to our Sugar House area, and we're desperately needing cops. So what I'm trying to say is, obviously, this city mismanaged the police impact fees, and the East Side Precinct should be higher priority. So again, I'm asking you, I know you care, but please redouble your efforts to provide the promised East Side Precinct. Those are my comments, and thank you for listening.
Next, we will hear from Emily Allworth. Emily, you are unmuted.
Hi there. I would like to chime in, following up on George's comment before me. I agree with him in that the impact fees were severely mishandled. I think it's frankly embarrassing, really, really embarrassing for the city to constantly be funding the police and seeing things mismanaged so wholly. We are giving so much money to an organization that is unable to purchase a property intended because it, quote, did not work for a lowercase East Side police precinct. They didn't even capitalize it correctly. I don't understand this whole section on their housekeeping, on the funds need to be refunded from unclaimed refunds because the administration is trying to find an East Side precinct and has evolving conversations and yet is unable to find something that works. This has been going on for far too long. I think that the city needs to consider how it is managing its money and time when it comes to policing. I don't know why we have an unlimited budget and time for dealing with these issues, and yet we are unable to correctly manage many simple issues within our city. There is money that could be spent being given to direct payments, credit cards, or even housing vouchers to unhoused people. And instead, we are spending money and time trying to figure out properties that will work for a precinct, put them in an old dump. I don't know, just find something that is empty. They can go in the old road home if they really hated it that much. I honestly don't care. I think you are spending way too much time and money, and it is embarrassing. I am embarrassed. Thank you.
That was our final comment for this item.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who commented. With that, council, I will look for a motion.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move the council continue the public hearing to June 1st.
Second.
Councilmember Dugan, was that a second? Okay, I have a, Jen, did you need to clarify something? Okay. I have a motion from Councilmember Rogers, a second from Councilmember Dugan. Here goes the roll call. Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
And I am a yes. Anna stepped away, so that passes, and we are moving on. Jen, are you going to talk about where people can find information such as our staff reports that really lay out all of the issues that we're talking about when we're looking at an agenda? That's come up a couple of times, and I know our staff works really hard to make sure that all of that is public. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that for us.
Yes, and I popped on actually to give it a little intro to the next hearing item. I was just a little early, but I will talk about the staff reports. Some of them are actually on the council's webpage homepage, including the budget amendment and links to the annual budget. So sometimes it helps if there's a timely issue to just go to the council's homepage. Otherwise, you can navigate to the council's meeting materials and any of the agenda items, especially if you click on the HTML version, you can navigate to any of the staff reports and attachments, and that's where you'll find more in-depth information on each of the agenda items. And I would just say to the public, always feel free to call our office if you're having trouble finding it. So
I was going to add that. I was going to offer your services. No, because I don't know where to find it. You guys send it to me. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. And now we are at our annual budget hearing that includes ordinances listed as items H4 to H15. These are all of the ordinance revisions that are associated with the implementation of the mayor's recommended budget for Salt Lake City, including the library fund for the fiscal year 2021-2022. All ordinances will be heard as one public hearing item today. And before we begin, I will turn the time over to Jennifer Bruno with our council staff to give us an introduction. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So just to give a little context, this is the first of 2 public hearings to accept public comment on the proposed fiscal year 22 budget. This hearing covers all ordinances associated with the budget, which in this agenda are items H4 to H15. It also includes the library budget and the overall capital improvement program investment. We did want to note for the public that specific allocations to specific projects are usually not decided until after the council's budget adoption in the council's July and August meetings. So follow those meetings if you're interested in those specific projects. There is a second public hearing on this budget scheduled for June 1st. The council will continue discussing specific departments in more detail at each of their work sessions, which are scheduled for every Tuesday in May and June and some Thursdays as needed. The mayor's proposed budget, staff reports, and analysis for all the departments and funds, and links to the various briefing videos of those Tuesday work sessions are available on our website. We've created a central place for all budget materials, and the public can view that at tinyurl.com/SLC FY22 budget. So hopefully that was clear. People can visit it. Otherwise, you can navigate through our webpage and there's pretty helpful links there. Because the topic of,
oh, sorry, Jen.
go ahead.
Maybe Bobby
Just
can just throw that in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah,
webpage
great idea.
chat for everybody.
And because the topic of policing and racial equity in policing is an important topic for the city at this time, I also wanted to share, again, Kira shared it earlier today, the central webpage for information on that, both as it relates to the budget and the council's other efforts in that area. And that's tinyurl.com/SLC racial equity. And Bobby will can hopefully put that in the chat too. Just in terms of timeline, the council may decide to make adjustments to the mayor's proposed budget, and those adjustments would also be discussed in the council's public work sessions, likely not until June. And the council is scheduled to adopt the fiscal year 22 budget on June 15th, although technically by law, the council has until June 30th to figure that out. So that's all, Madam Chair. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. And I'll just add a couple of things for the public. We are scheduled to have another work session on May 25th, June 1st, June 3rd, and then the week after that as well before we adopt the budget. And in each of those work sessions, we will be going over the different departments' budgets and having conversations. So I'd encourage people to listen into those work sessions if there's a particular department or issue that you're interested in regarding the budget. And with that, I will turn the time over to Taylor to get us started on commenters. Thank you, Taylor.
For these items, it looks like we have about 4 people here to speak. The first will be George Chapman, followed by Tyre Hauser, and then Callie Maurer. George, you are unmuted.
Okay, police are losing 7 in a week. That should be a wake-up call to pay our first responders more than you're thinking is appropriate, right? Police not being able to respond until the next day, like the chief mentioned, should be a wake-up call to pay police more. So what I'm trying to say is, Mayor, you fought to add 50 new cops years ago, and you won, but now we're in the hole even worse. We want police response to be within an hour, not 24 hours. It's incredibly poor management to spend 10 months and run police through the best de-escalation training system and requirements in Utah, and yet end up losing them to other departments due to poor pay. The more we pay our best officers, the better our force can practice de-escalation. On the airport, walking to the planes is a mile-long walk. Isn't that the longest walk in the U.S.? Obviously, we should be fixing it. This city should stop using consultants. The Seven Canyons fountain sculpture is art, and we shouldn't be trying to look for an excuse to destroy one of the city's great pieces of art. Trips to transit is a waste of money. $35 ride subsidy, come on. And libraries need pocket libraries. And this city should separate the budget items to allow a more respectful public engagement. 2 minutes allowed to comment for 302 pages is almost impossible, except for me.
Next, we will hear from Tyre Hauser, then Callie Maurer, followed by Ainsley Mensch. Tyre, you are unmuted.
Hello there. My name is Tyre Hauser, and I'm here to ask you to consider a budget amendment to support our request to improve the tennis centers for decades to come. I'm 19 years old, and I live near Liberty Park. A little background on me. I was adopted from Kazakhstan at 15 months old by my amazing mother. When I was 15 years old, my mother was looking for a way to keep me busy in the summers and after school. So she signed me up for Liberty Hills tennis. I loved it from the very first day. And although it was the most affordable tennis option in the valley by far, my mother realized she couldn't afford it. That's when my grandfather stepped forward and paid for it. He supported my tennis for a year. 3 years ago today, in fact, he passed away. That's when Spencer reached out and made it possible to continue. With this, Spencer changed my life. I would play 8 to 10 hours, 7 days a week. While playing this much, I made very close friends from all over the city. Some of my fondest memories come from playing tennis, listening to music, and hanging out with my friends at Liberty Hills. I'm attending college in the fall and I am planning to try out for the tennis team. When I was 16, I realized I needed to get a job to help out my mom, and Spencer was kind enough to offer me a position. Spencer and Liberty Hills taught me leadership, people skills, and accountability. These job skills will help me my entire life. I've grown very close with all the amazing staff at Liberty Hills Tennis. To me, they've become like a family. I can't even begin to imagine life without Liberty Hills and the people. Spencer Marchant and Liberty Hills Tennis completely changed my life, and for that I am forever grateful. Please do support a budget amendment. Thank you for your time.
Next, we will hear from Callie Maurer, followed by Ainsley Mensch, and then Ann Charles. Callie, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, Mayor and council members. I am speaking on behalf of the CIP budget recommendation for Odyssey House at a property owned by the city, which we rent. Mayor, I really wanted to thank you for the recommendation to fund for $300,000 for the property. To give you a little background on the property, this is our Fathers with Children program and also an auxiliary housing for our adult residential programs. Thousands of Salt Lake City residents have gone through here on their journey to recovery and have found successful recovery and become contributing citizens within Salt Lake City. And so we've relied a lot on city funding for our treatment programs. The big but on this presentation is we were underfunded by $200,000, and we're pretty nervous about the facility. The structural integrity of the building has decayed to where we're concerned about general safety. Odyssey House is paying the cost to replace the exterior doors, and there's one exterior exit door on our Fathers with Children program that we're nervous to even take out because it might crumble a corner of the building, and we're not able to make those renovations. And so as a tenant who has been renting from the city for 20 plus years, we really want to collaborate with you guys to continue renting this facility for a very long time to come. However, with the recommendation, it's not going to be enough to make the renovations needed. And we would desperately like to encourage the council to reconsider funding to add the additional $200,000 on to complete the renovations of this project so that we can stay there and always be good tenants to Salt Lake City and continue providing the incredible services to fathers with dads. That program doesn't exist anywhere on the West Coast. It's a really unique program and very beautiful. I will reach out to all of you council members to come through and see it if you're interested and to get to know us a little bit better. So thank you for the time. I yield the rest of my minutes available.
Next, we will hear from Ainsley Mensch, followed by Ann Charles, and then Emily Allworth. Ainsley, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I'm speaking about the police department budget, which is set at $83 million. If this isn't the right time, I was a little bit confused. Feel free to cut me off. So the residents of Salt Lake City have engaged in every facet of democracy available to demand the defunding of the police. We have petitioned, we have protested, we have participated in every city council meeting. We have said countless times where we would rather have that money go. To approve a department budget that is $4 million above last year, and to give the police department any money, quite frankly, is disrespectful and insulting to your constituents and out of touch with their needs. I don't understand how we are supposed to have any trust in our public officials when they ignore the demands of the people they are supposed to represent, who have used every avenue of democracy that has been given to them. We demand that you defund the police and stop the cops from terrorizing the residents of Salt Lake City. Thank you so much.
Next, we will hear from Ann Charles, followed by Emily Allworth, and then Deborah Chaltern. Ann, you are unmuted.
Thanks. First, I just want to reiterate the comments of Callie Maurer. I also work for Odyssey House, and we can definitely use more funding. I know we're constantly trying to make things work with what we have, and we are actively helping those that alternatively could be within the criminal justice system. And so with that, I would also like to urge you to reduce the funding for the police. Just last year, you all were saying that this is just the first step. Anna Valdemora said this journey is far from over. Amy, you said, I don't make promises I can't keep. I can promise you. Sorry, let me see this better. But also reiterated that. Chris Wharton, you did as well. You said that this represents a unique moment in our history to deconstruct these problems within our systems and fix them. By increasing their budget, how are you deconstructing that system? You are simply reinforcing and building up that system. That's just really discouraging. I've come to almost every city council this meeting expressing the same points, and I have heard others do the same. Minimal steps have been taken this past year when you committed to taking more steps, and then you're increasing the budget not only from last year, but even from the year before that. And so I don't think you should continue funding a mismanaged organization. If you just look at the small bit of the matrix review that they did, they continually have issues with how they're budgeting their money, and it's super untransparent the way that they're moving money around. I just today had to de-escalate a client who we had to put in her room due to potential COVID exposure, and she was in an active trauma trigger from being in jail. The simple fact that we are incarcerating people results in mental health issues that I, at Odyssey House, which is being underfunded, have to then process through and have to de-escalate her through because she wanted to leave, in which she would have relapsed, and then it would have been just moving through that same.
Next, we will hear from Emily Allworth and then Deborah Chaltron. Emily, you are unmuted.
Hi, I would also like to oppose the increased funding to the police department. I am constantly confused as to why within a city that claims to care about social justice and is willing to write Black Lives Matter on sidewalk is unwilling to look into seriously defunding police. Temporarily lowering funding to the police for 1 year and then adding more funding back than had previously even been decreased is not a step towards creating a new system. It is in fact emboldening the very system that it came from. I understand that some of the increases to the budget are under things that might seem potentially to people who have a lot on their plate and maybe do not go in depth to investigate what they're actually voting on. It might seem like it's a good idea to fund people who can have therapeutic services on call for police officers. However, there are a lot of people who deserve therapy. There are a lot of people who deserve social workers. There are a lot of people who deserve care and love. There is budgeting in the police for the police for food and drink while working to have a safe and productive environment. There is money towards a monthly amount of money that goes towards upkeep on their uniforms. There's if you have a canine dog in a canine unit, you get paid for time. You get an hourly rate for time to take care of that dog outside of your regular work hours. I'm sorry, but everyone deserves that, not just the police. And I think that if it's really such a thing that you support, if you really think that people need healthcare and people need mental health care.
Next, we will hear from Deborah Chaltron.
Hi, my name is Deborah Chaltron. I live in Sugar House, And first, I'd like to thank you for your patience with my earlier misspeaking, mistime. I'd like to bring awareness to the council about the mayor's budget not making room for capital improvements at the Salt Lake City's most used tennis centers, Liberty Park and Wasatch Hills. I was introduced to the wonderful sport of tennis at the city's two managed tennis centers, Wasatch Hills and Liberty Park. These two tennis facilities are the only facilities in Salt Lake available to the public that do not require a membership. And because of this, tennis is accessible to and inclusive of the general public. Both of the facilities are owned by the city and are in need of attention and repair. The concessionaire, Spencer Marchant, along with his team and the tennis community, have done everything they can to make these tennis centers something that Salt Lake City can be proud of. I believe it's now time for the city to partner with and invest in their own land. I invite you to look at the constituents' requests at these two sites and please consider amending the budget. On a personal note, I work as a flight attendant. It's a very lonely position. And the way that I was able to develop community and create a tribe of my own was through tennis. And it has been the tribe and it's been the sport that has actually gotten me through a very difficult time, well, through this past year. It's been the only thing that I could look forward to and the only thing that's actually given me something to look forward to. So yes, again, I do invite you to look at the request for these two sites and please consider amending the budget. Thank you.
That was our final comment for this item.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to everyone who commented. Sorry. I will look for a motion.
I have a motion, Madam Chair. I move the council close the public hearings for items H4 through H15 and refer to the public hearings on June 1st, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Mano. I will go ahead and roll call this. Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mano.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That passes, and we will move on in our agenda. So we will have another public hearing on June 1st, as was mentioned, regarding the budget. This does conclude the public hearings for the mayor's recommended budget for Salt Lake City, including the library fund for fiscal year 2021-2022. And we are now at potential action items of our agenda. Item I1 is a budget amendment number 8 ordinance, and I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the council adopt an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021 final budget of the Salt Lake City, including employment staffing document as shown on the motion sheet.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Mano. I will go ahead and roll call this. Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
I'll abstain because I wasn't present for all the discussions on that one.
Okay. Councilmember Mano.
Yes.
And I am a yes. So that does pass with one abstention, with one person abstaining. The next item is an ordinance that would rezone property at 2058 North, 2200 West from Agricultural District AG2 to Light Manufacturing M1. I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the council adopt an ordinance amending the zoning map pertaining to the parcel at approximately 2058 north, 2200 west from AG2 agriculture to M1 manufacturing.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers, a second by Councilmember Dugan. Again, I'll go ahead and roll call this. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mano.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Abstain.
Okay, I am a yes, so that passes with one council member abstaining. We are now on to section J, which is our comment section. First off, questions to the mayor, city council members. Do you have any questions for Madam Mayor? Madam Mayor, thank you as always for being with us. We do appreciate your presence. I don't see any questions for you yet, so maybe next time. Okay, and we are at the general comment portion of our agenda. For comments about general topics and items that were not scheduled for a hearing tonight. Will the city council's rules of decorum earlier, and those rules apply here as well. So please continue to be respectful, no profanity, no obscene or racial remarks or anything disrespectful. We will have you muted if it gets that way. And I do appreciate everyone's respect that has been commenting already. We really do care and listen to your comments and want to hear them. So with that, I will turn it over to Taylor.
It looks like we have about 13 people here to speak for general comment tonight. The first of which will be Beverly Cooper, followed by Hillary Jacobs, and then Daniel Schelling. Beverly, you are unmuted.
I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight about the Foothills Trails project. I'm an Avenues resident and have been hiking foothill trails for 30 plus years I've lived here. What has happened to the potential of the hiking trails is shocking to everyone I've hiked with in the last few months. This plan is way too important not to be done right. Our foothills are fragile and exist in a dry climate. This needs to be done right. Trails are built across rock slides, soft soils, and steep slopes, and now into a habitat study area by Twin Peaks. First, the trails are made for bicycles, then it's decided after it's built to make it for hikers. The master plan says the trail will go one way, then it goes another, and there's already been trail closures for maintenance. Where is the accountability for the state of these trails? Who gets to decide to change the direction or purpose of the trail? I've never seen any markers indicating which way the bulldozer is to build a trail. There should be an engineer and surveyor on the ground marking the paths. The foothill paths are changed daily. This is not right. The next plan is to go into Dry Creek, a riparian area. Have the proper studies been done? There's potentially culturally sensitive land in the area of Twin Peaks. Tribes were asked to weigh in, and when they weren't heard from, the work continued. As far as I can see, there's no oversight or accountability in this project, and that needs to change. I'm asking you tonight to halt permanently any construction in the Twin Peaks and Dry Creek areas. I'm asking you to not release funding for any further trail building phases 2 and 3 until there's assessment of the ecological, erosional, and watershed damage that has already occurred. Do this right. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Hillary Jacobs, followed by Daniel Schelling, and then Steven Stepanek. Hillary, you are unmuted.
Hello, my name is Hillary Jacobs, and for almost 3 decades, I have walked in the beautiful foothills and mountains that embrace our city on the north and east sides of our valley. On Salt Lake City's trails, my fellow outdoor recreationists and I have enjoyed meadows of wildflowers where raptors dive, refreshing streams in hot summer months, and undisturbed ridges from which we have enjoyed views of our Great Salt Lake Valley, the Wasatch Mountains, City Creek, and other canyons beyond. We've been honored to enjoy and steward our wild lands. Under the guise of a Trails Master Plan, Salt Lake City Parks and Trails promised to create an equitable, sustainable trail system, one that would accommodate a full spectrum of trail users, hikers, dog walkers, skiers, snowshoers, and mountain bikers. We expected a new series of beautiful trails reminiscent of those that we have walked for decades. But what happened? Tractors with backhoes arrived. We called the city. We asked why they were gashing our hillsides, tearing out mature forests, and slashing through our precious wildlife habitats. In the meadow above 18th Avenue, a new downhill-only bike trail has eviscerated what was a pristine gully that housed coyotes, foxes, deer, and an occasional moose. And this is just the beginning of the hacking and destruction that has spread like a cancer across our meadows, ridges, and quiet spaces. Let us be clear. The master plan has resulted in neither a sustainable nor an equitable trail system. To explain what has achieved, I want to read you a definition. An act of plunder, violent seizure, or abuse, despoliation, violation, or more informally, to totally defeat, wreck, dominate, or decimate. These definitions describe with chilling accuracy what the Salt Lake City Parks and Trails Division has done to our foothills. Rape. Violence has been perpetrated against the very spaces that this plan claims to protect. Destroying under the guise of protection. That's what abusers do. Now that the foothills have been raped, what will Salt Lake Parks and Trails do to heal these terrible wounds? These gashes run deep, they run red, and they are a legacy of shame. It's time for Parks and Trails to stop this assault, take stock of what they have done, and fulfill the promises they have buried. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Daniel Schelling, followed by Steven Stepanek, and then Ronnie Danish. Daniel, you are unmuted.
My name is Daniel Schelling. I'm a 27-year resident of the Avenues, a professional geologist, and I've been walking, running, and biking the trails above Salt Lake City for more than 2.5 decades. Like many other residents of Salt Lake City, I've been shocked by the scarring and destruction of our foothills that has been occurring over the last 8 months as part of Salt Lake City's Foothills Trail Master Plan. While I agree that a heavy-handed approach to trail building has caused immediate and horrifying damage, I also believe that the master plan adopted by the city in March of 2020 is itself deeply flawed, and its implementation will cause lasting damage to the foothills. Significant problems that I have identified with the Foothills Trail Master Plan include: 1, proposing and building multiple trails in geologically unsuitable and therefore unsustainable locations that should have been identified during the early stages of the master plan. 2, designing combined uphill bike and pedestrian trails in multiple locations that the city then found unsuitable for this dual purpose, and therefore had to convert to pedestrian-only trails. 3, designating Dry Creek as a downhill mountain bike trail, despite the fact that the dominant user groups on this trail are uphill mountain bikers and hikers. 4, designing a trail system that includes uphill mountain bike trails and no associated downhill bike trails, which will force bikes to travel downhill on pedestrian-only trails or trails closed for erosion control. 5, closing, trenching, and defacing some of Salt Lake City's residents' favorite hiking trails, including the Ridgeline Trail above Terrace Hills. And 6, ignoring historical context and indigenous precedent during both trail design and naming. While I recognize that the city has identified problems with the master plan and has in some cases changed trails to accommodate these problems, the flaws to the master plan are so numerous that it should be incumbent upon the city council and the mayor to stop any further construction of foothill trails until the public and the city have had time to review the master plan as it presently exists and to allow a broad spectrum of the public to assist in making any necessary and all changes to the plan. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Steven Stepanek and then Ronnie Danish, followed by Debbie Vetter. You are unmuted.
Thank you. My family and I have lived in the Avenues for over 40 years, and we have continually used and accessed the trails in City Creek and the Bonneville Shoreline Trail area above the Avenues. We have seen many of the new trails and used many of the new trails that have been constructed over the last year, and request that the city council pause the trail development work and allow for additional feedback and comments by the community with $1 million of a $6 million project spent already, the magnitude of that portion alone of the project is now evident to residents and users of the trail system. There are many problems, as you've heard others expressed today, with the new construction, and I believe that we need to work to preserve the fragile environment. I request that we have a pause in constructing more trails to get more input from residents and users. I have communicated my concerns more extensively to the Trails and Natural Lands Division and request that the Community Council, the City Council, and the Mayor pause additional construction until there's time to reassess this aggressive plan. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Ronnie Danish, followed by Debbie Fetter, and then Natalia Salmon. Ronnie, you are unmuted. We will troubleshoot with Ronnie and move on to Debbie. Debbie, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. I urge the council to revisit the Foothill Trails Master Plan. You've heard specific critiques from other speakers. I suggest the problems are more fundamental. Flawed assumptions about what we need and why, and gross imbalance in interest group participation. The premise is flawed. Was the plan really inspired by a need to improve all users' experience while preserving the foothills for posterity? Or was it designed to please and attract more of a subset of users, downhill mountain bikers? I would like to know who promoted this plan and what their interests were. Planners assert a need to separate downhill bikers from hikers for everyone's safety and to accommodate more users. This presupposes that all users should be accommodated. The downhill cyclists are as desired as walkers, hikers, and bicycle tourists who tread more lightly. This premise should be questioned. Planners assert hikers want longer, gentler trails. Have they polled the hikers who have enjoyed the steepest of these trails for decades? It is rather that these low-grade, longer trails are convenient for uphill cyclists, perhaps. Planners contend users cause erosion with illegal social trails, so these trails must be abandoned. But if they studied historical usage, they would know that many of the old trails were far superior to the new ones, sensible, stable, enjoyable, and usable in all seasons, at least until aggressive downhill cyclists gouged, carved, and reconfigured them. And then the steep trails most enjoyed by hikers were turned over to the cyclists. Is the problem perhaps presence of so many wheels where they have no business? Is it possible the planners were led astray, that enforcing real rules of trail etiquette and prohibiting cyclists altogether on steeper and more sensitive terrain could solve the problems they identify? Is it possible special interest groups were allowed to shape the process? I want to know the answers. The council must conduct public hearings and an in-depth, independent re-examination of the plan before further public funds are spent. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Natalia Salvin, followed by Scott Williams, and then Ann Charles. Natalia, you are unmuted.
Hi, so I messed up and I wanted to comment on the general budget. But I am for funneling money out of the police and just basically funneling it out of a system that has been proven ineffective and funneling it into very clear demands that we've been making that not only save taxpayer dollars, but also help fund into a community so it can further thrive. We have no proof that faster response times actually equals lower crime rates, but there is proof that if we do subsidized housing and rental assistance, that we do save money and then we do lift more people out of the poverty line. And I don't know why there's such a disconnect for something that's so painfully simple. And that's all I wanted to say.
Next, we will hear from Scott Williams, followed by Ann Charles, and then Roger Borgenich.
Thank you.
Scott, you are unmuted.
Oh, thank you. My name's Scott Williams. I've been on the call since the meeting started, and I just wanted to begin by thanking you for your service and realizing how many issues you have to research and consider. I've lived on the avenues for 60 of my 68 years. I grew up playing in those foothills above the avenues, catching lizards and squirrels, and I even went camping up there when I was a kid to get my Boy Scout camping merit badge. For the past few decades, though, I've been hiking up there, just getting away from the rush of the city and having the really amazing experience that I think is very unique to Salt Lake, to feel lost in nature when in reality I was only about a mile or two from the city. When the trail plan was developed, I think many of us envisioned the trails that looked like the ones that were already there, very sort of subtle, not that obvious unless you were right on them, not the deep switchbacking cuts up the hills that now make what previously felt pastoral now look kind of like a race course. I work in environmental advocacy myself, and we have a saying that preservation is always temporary, but degradation is permanent. So I'm just also going to join the others in asking you to please stop any further permanent trail development until the plan can be reconsidered and modified to incorporate the values of solitude and the unscarred views that are important to hikers. Consider the process for stabilizing and revegetating the scars that have already been made, and consider the input of users now that about what were once lines on a map, but now are scars on the hillside. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Ann Charles, followed by Chris Butler, and then Alexandra Peretta. Ann, you are unmuted.
Thanks. I was confused. I saw H4 through 15 that was going to be seen as one item, and there wasn't. I signed up for a specific time to comment on that, and then there wasn't a time for that. So I just want to express that again, the accessibility is an issue. But specifically on those pieces, I had some issues with how pay is given specifically to the police. There were several items. So one is that overtime pay is given if you're given late notice for them. They also get money each week for food. They get $75 a month for their uniform, as well as $39 a month for plain clothes. People within the justice court get Columbus Day off, but no other employees do. I see a lot of privileges for these groups that other employees and other people just don't get. And I don't support that. Also, the police union contract hasn't been updated since 2011. I don't think that makes sense given changes that you guys have been saying you want to make within policing. That should be done stat. Like this year, last year, the year before, any time in the last 10 years, we could have been making updates to this contract to make sure that things were looked at. So I tried to look at the contract, and I'm going to have to go back to 2011, I guess, to see what's in that. We should have more accessible information to people. I shouldn't have to dig through records to find what the current police union contract looks like. So those are my comments on H4 through H15.
Next, we will hear from Chris Butler, followed by Alexandra Peretta, and then Mark Barrett. Chris, you are unmuted.
Hello, this is my first time commenting, and so I realized I should have also been commenting in the previous because I wanted to speak about the police budget. I really think that after everything Salt Lake and just the whole nation have been through recently with police violence, it really feels kind of like a slap in the face to everyone who's been affected by the police violence, harassment, and their poor decision making that we're increasing or proposing to increase the police budget. If we look at policing, you know, less than half of crimes ever get reported to police, and less than half of those ever get solved. You know, if my job or really any job was operating at that kind of efficiency, so like 20% or less, you know, we'd be looking to, you know, replace those things. And really, I think we should be moving to defund and even abolish the police because they're not doing a good job in the roles they are put in. And we should be replacing them with things like more social workers and more money going to housing and that kind of stuff, because that's gonna really solve the problem. And police, I feel, are causing more of a problem. And that's it. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Alexandra Peretta, followed by Mark Barrett, and then George Chapman. Alexandra, you are now unmuted.
Hi there, thank you. So to reiterate a lot of the other points, I wanted to comment about the police budget. Didn't know about the right place to public comment. Anyways, at this point, it's just really frustrating that so many people have done the work for the city council as to how and why the police budget can and should be defunded. And it just kind of feels like we're being gaslit because you're telling us over and over that you're going to make changes, and it just feels like it's kind of this like, yeah, it feels so manipulative, and we're just being lied to our faces over and over. And like Anne mentioned earlier about how different members of the city council made promises, and you think that we're going to forget these things, and we won't, and we don't. So just look at the work that we've done for you. We've made it easy, and cut the police budget in half, at least. I yield my time.
Next, we will hear from Mark Barrett, followed by George Chapman, and then Emily Allworth. Mark, you are unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I've been harassed by Salt Lake County Animal Services for about 4 months. They said there's a Salt Lake City law that says a dog can't be tethered in front of your yard for more than an hour. My dog loves to be outside. She hates to be inside. They tried to steal my dog out of my front yard. They literally tried to they told me they're confiscating my dog out of my front yard twice. In the last 4 months, about 2 months. When I grabbed my dog and I pulled my dog inside my front door and I closed the door, then the Salt Lake City police showed up, said, "You assaulted the Salt Lake County's animal services officer." They said the officer showed them scratches on her arm. They said the county officer showed them scratches on their arm. Is what they told me. And I said, "I never touched her. I never scratched her. I never touched her." So I wanted it to be known. I wanted it to be said that's happening. That's the only thing I wanted it to be said. I only wanted to say it's been said. That's all.
Next, we will hear from George Chapman and then Emily Allworth. George, you're unmuted.
Okay, I was very disturbed to hear about the previous speaker. I hope the city council and the mayor, I know you care about dogs, Mayor, and animals, and I hope you investigate the issue because people need pets, especially in trying times like now. Please investigate further previous callers' issues. Okay, general comments. Social workers should not be considered an appropriate or safe response to homeless when drugs are endemic in most of our homeless population. I believe that drug use in our homeless population in the last few years have doubled or maybe even tripled. Several of you on the council would know better, but there is a drug issue, obviously, and partly due to the homeless being thrown out of homeless shelters for using drugs, and that's a problem. So despite the fact that the homeless are using them to help with their mental health issues, because of that, and also exacerbated by the county jail refusing to jail drug dealers, social workers may be faced with a calm person who in less than a second can turn into a violent person who could need 5 officers to control them. Even people on drugs kill even their loved ones, and that's the issue. There's so many drugs, you can't really depend on social workers to do this. What I'm trying to say is that poorly trained police officer response. It's a sad commentary on our situation, but it is reality. And although hundreds demand defunding police, tens of thousands want more police, almost 10,000 a month are demanding police response. That's what should be important to our city. Thanks for listening.
Next, we will hear from Emily Allworth. Emily, you are unmuted.
Hi, I would like to have a quick response to George just saying, I have known many social workers and I don't know of a single social worker who has ever dealt with someone in an inflamed, violent, or triggered situation that has ever had to call the police for help. I think 5 men with guns is far too many to handle a single person. That seems just frankly asinine to me. I think that our overuse of firearms to handle situations leads to situations in which people with mental health illnesses, underage people, people who are unable to speak for themselves, are often shot on site rather than handled properly. I believe more social workers are needed. I would like to also speak out against approving the memorandum of understanding between Salt Lake City and the Salt Lake City Police Association. As I hope all of you are aware, since you will be the ones voting on this issue, the memorandum between the Salt Lake City and Salt Lake City Police Association has been continually renewed year after year without review since 2011. The fact that in in 10 years now, not a single reassessment of this agreement has happened. The city has not once gone against the Salt Lake City Police Association's wants and needs and bartered with this union. I am a pro-union person. However, I am anti-police union, and I do not believe that it is in the best interests of the people in our city to continually fund policing while also allowing their union to set the standards that were appropriate in 2011. Clearly, all of us, as exemplified by the many words of the city council in response to the George Floyd killing.
And that was our final commenter for general comment for this evening.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to everyone who commented tonight. Council members, we are now at our new business section, item K1.
Council Chair, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We have one more commenter who just signed up, Josh Kevholtz. 1 moment, please.
Okie doke.
Josh, you are unmuted.
Great. Sorry to keep y'all waiting. I thought I had checked the general comment box. I don't know I was on the list. Anyways, my name is Josh Kiplovitz again, small business owner, social worker. First and foremost, I'd like to correct the record about what George Shapton said. Social workers deal with people who are under the influence of substances all the time. In fact, that's an entire specialty within the field of social work, so that was pretty silly. But I'm here to make a comment about the budget. Sorry if I was supposed to speak earlier about this. But I'd like to say and urge the City Council and Mayor Mendenhall to make changes to the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. After a community came together last summer to protest police brutality and call for defunding the police, all of you sat here and rejected our demands, saying something like, this takes time and thought and slow progress. Yet again this year, you asked for another increase to the SLCPD budget by 5% when their budget has already grown 58% in less than a decade and is already beyond the average budget for cities of similar sizes. Like, do y'all actually care, or were you just saying that to silence us? We want meaningful change. The police do not keep us safe and do not solve the problems of our community. Mike Brown himself said that the police are the least effective and most expensive option for most issues that police deal with. We call on the city to defund the police budget by 50% and redirect those funds to programs that actually lift up our community, like investing in rental assistance and housing programs, mental health and substance use services, safer and more supportive public spaces, perhaps tennis courts, like some of the callers had mentioned. Decarcerate Utah has published our demands about where we want cuts and where that money should go, and I urge the council and Mayor Mendenhall to read through our demands and see what real meaningful change can look like. Thank you so much.
That is now our last comment for the evening.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to point out that there are updated MOUs with the police union, and Bobby put a link in the chat where you can see the labor agreements. I believe they're also on the Salt Lake City's HR page, and they may be on our audit page, but Jen just popped up to give us more information on where people can find those.
Yeah, just in case people are tuning in that can't see the chat, if you go to the council's webpage and look for the REP hub, specifically the work on the police audit, there's a whole document library there, and that's where all those documents are kept. So, and feel free to reach out to our staff if you're having trouble locating it. So happy to help find it.
Perfect, thank you so much. I also we had a lot of calls about the Trails Master Plan, and did get a little information that I wanted to be able to share. And that is that the administration and the team is evaluating sensitive areas and will pause to do more assessment between phase 1 and 2. There's also an FAQ page on the website. So just a little more information for some of the people that had some comments about that. With that, council members, we will go to new business, which is our advice and consent agenda. I will look for a motion.
So moved. Or more specifically, I move to approve the consent agenda.
You're fine. I just need a second.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wharton and a second by Councilmember Dugan. I will go ahead and roll call this. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Romano.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes, and that passes unanimously. This brings us to unfinished business. Item L1 is regarding an ordinance that would grant a master license agreement for wireless facilities in the public way to SQF LLC, a Delaware limited liability company. The agreement would allow this small cell provider to install and maintain small cell infrastructure within the city rights of way, subject to conditions in the agreement and after securing specific site approvals. I will look for a motion.
Sorry, Madam Chair, before we move on to this one, I think there was new business, the advice and consent.
I did before
Did you guys get that?
Yeah, we did.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Both Katie and I didn't hear it, so apologies.
No,
Thanks.
not a problem. Thanks for checking in. So going back to unfinished business, which is the master license agreement with SQF, I will look for a motion. No, no motions. Just gonna chill here silently.
Do we have a motion sheet?
Thanks, Bobby.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance granting the master license agreement, and we'll say that we're continuing to look at the design standards and see how the city can better represent residents in this process moving forward.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wharton and a second by Councilmember Rogers. Is there any further discussion to this? With that, I will go ahead and roll call. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Abstain.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros, excuse me.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes, that passes with one member abstaining. This brings us to L3. No, sorry, L2, which is the ordinance that would grant a telecommunication franchise agreement to SQF. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I will make a motion that the council adopt an ordinance granting a telecommunications franchise agreement to SQF LLC.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Mono. Your roll call. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Abstain.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
I am a yes, that passes with Councilmember Ferris abstaining. L3 is an ordinance that would approve an amended and restated broadband services franchise agreement to Google Fiber Utah LLC. Google Fiber intends to discontinue video services to its customer base.
Madam Chair, I move the council adopt the ordinance approving the amended and restated broadband services franchise agreement with Google Fiber Utah LLC.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Mono. I will roll call. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Abstain.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
And I am a yes, and that passes with Councilmember Ferris abstaining. L4 is the Housing Trust Fund loan amendment to the Garden Lofts. It would be a resolution that would authorize 2 changes to the original loan agreement between the city's Housing Trust Fund and Garden Lofts Holding LP.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move the council adopt the resolution authorizing loan amendment from the Housing Trust Fund to Garden Lofts Holding LP.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Rogers and a second by Councilmember Mono. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, and that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our consent portion of our agenda. I will look for a motion.
Council
Move we
Chair,
approve
I-
the consent-
Yes,
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I'm wondering, before you adopt your consent agenda, I think on the advice and consent matter for Debbie Lyons, Councilmember Wharton's motion was actually to approve the consent agenda, and I wonder if you could just clarify, Councilmember Wharton, if your motion was to approve the advice and consent for Debbie Lyons, just for the record, please.
Yes. Sorry, I was thinking advice and consent, but I said consent agenda. But I also said so moved. So I feel like, anyway, I intended it to be Debbie Lyons.
I intend my second to be Debbie Lyons.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
Katie, does that suffice for the records? Thank you. At this point, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda from Councilmember Rogers. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Councilmember Wharton. Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros,
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
and I am a yes. And
I'm a yes as well, Madam Chair.
oh, sorry, Councilmember Rogers. My tiles jumped around and then I lost track of where I was going to keep us all on our toes.
Yep.
So if I'm a yes, that passes. And that means that we are at the end and we are adjourned at this point. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you, council members and Madam Mayor.